We invite guests who like to have fun and have some value to add for our audience of globalization professionals. I'm always eager to provide a platform to those with a good story or a good data set. So let us know if there are any topics you'd like covered or guests we should reach out to for future episodes. If you haven't already done so, then make sure that you are subscribed to Nimdzi Insights. Now's your chance. If you are subscribed, you're going to be the first person to know when we schedule new events like this or when we publish new research. Available at nimdzi.com. And speaking of events, I wanted to take a moment today to look at the Nimdzi events calendar. And for those of you that aren't aware, if you go to nimdzi.com/events, you can see all of the upcoming events in the industry. If you have an event that you'd like to add to this calendar, you can do so. There's a self-service right here. Lots of people use this to plan their travel budget for the year. And of course, future Nimdzi Live episodes, as well as big events from Nimdzi Insights are also listed on here as well. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague from Multilingual Magazine today, Eddie, who is going to tell us a little bit about Multilingual Magazine because today's conversation features an article published on Multilingual. Eddie, take it away.
That's right. Tucker, thank you so much for the time. And just for those that don't know, Multilingual Media is the most influential global multi-platform publisher for the language and localization industries since 1987. But I won't tell you about that today. I won't tell you about our over 47,000 readers worldwide, 89 countries. I just want to leave the audience with something that might be useful for them. And that is around press releases. So if you have press releases, and if you didn't know, you can send those over to Multilingual and we will publish them for free. You can send an image with that, you can send a link with that, and you can do that as easily as you can imagine. So you can go to multilingual.com/submit-news, or easier, you just send those press releases to news@multilingual.com. And with that, we'll receive those. And if for whatever reason it doesn't work, I'll be talking to you. My name is Eddie Arrieta, and I'm leading partner success at Multilingual. And I love to see your announcements, your press releases coming our way, and we'll get you some exposure. So thank you, Tucker, for the time. And I'm really excited to see what this interview is going to turn out to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eddie. And for those of you joining us live today, you can join us in the comment section. And we'll try to get to those comments as we are going through this. So questions and comments for us or for our guests, then that's what it's there for. So let's get right into it today. Today's topic. So in a recent article, Live Machine Translation: A New Dawn for Conference Interpreters, was published in Multilingual Magazine. Oddmund Braaten, the CEO of Interprify, addresses the pressing issue of interpreter shortages and how machine translation, automatic speech recognition can help break down language barriers and meet the growing demand for interpretation. We'll delve into the possibilities of automating live translation, the benefits of incorporating captions at events, and the symbiotic relationship between technology and human interpreters. Additionally, we're going to be discussing the rapid rise of machine translation and its impact on conference interpreting. Don't forget to grab your copy of Multilingual Magazine. It's this one right here, the April edition. And if you're following along at home, we are on page 53, where we're going to be going through Oddmund's article. If you'd like to follow along at home. Introducing our guest today, Oddmund Braaten is the CEO of Interprify. Oddmund is a seasoned leader in strategy and business development, known for his innovative thinking and execution prowess in growing successful businesses. With a wealth of experience in the Hi-Tec and Telcom Industries, Oddmund has a proven track record in driving revenue growth, product management, and people management. His expertise extends to the areas such as partner management, business case development, planning and execution, team building, change management, cost control, and stakeholder management. Many of you know Interprify already. The company Oddmund leads is founded in 2014 by Kim Ludvigsen. Interprify aims to break down language barriers by revolutionizing the delivery of simultaneous interpretation through cutting-edge cloud-based technology. In recent years, Interprify has experienced remarkable growth, providing unparalleled support to international organizations, not-for-profits, SMEs, and multinational enterprises. Their prestigious clientele includes renowned names such as Google, GlaxoSmithKline, UEFA, and Facebook, enabling them to truly make their events multilingual. That's a mouthful for Interpify. I think we could probably go on, but I'm going to turn it over to you, Oddmund. Welcome to the show. Anything that I left out in your introduction or talking about Interpify?
No, hi there, Tucker and everyone. So I'm happy to be here. And as you mentioned, I'm leading Interpify, and some of you know us, and we've been focusing on remote simultaneous interpretation for the last 8 years, and my background is a technologist, so I'm sort of new to the language industry. So I'm happy to be here and discuss this now trend and merge. We have technology, human, professional interpreter, and machine, and how that we can blend that together. So now. Looking forward to our discussion.
Welcome to the show, Oddmund. And thank you for submitting an article to Multilingual for publication. It was a great article that I had the opportunity to read. And as I was going through it, I pulled out some quotes for it to kind of help structure a conversation between us today, because I think you make some really good points in here. So let me just start by bringing up on screen here. Once again, it's the April issue if you're following along at home. And one thing that I wanted to, so just a quick introduction. I'll introduce the premise here. Everyone from large corporations and NGOs to SMEs and freelancers can gain access to live translation services, making it extremely easy to cater to audiences across the globe. It also reduces the need for interpreters to travel, thereby minimizing costs and the impact on the environment. But as events went digital during the pandemic, the need for language interpreting has skyrocketed. Demand only expected to grow as the world continues to connect and conduct business in hybrid participation setups, and businesses are having to find new solutions to cater to international dispersed audiences. And I thought this was a great introduction to the topic today. And the first question I wanted to talk to you about is, how has that whole landscape changed in the last 3, 4, 5 years? And we had a global pandemic that, of course, it hit every industry, but as far as conference interpreting, on-site interpreting, it hit that particularly hard because there were no in-person events to interpret for. And what we've seen here at Nimdzi is that it really kind of accelerated an evolution within the interpreting space. To rely more on technology, but I wanted to get it straight from your mouth. What are some of the changes that you've seen?
Yes, so as I said, I've been in this industry now for like 7, 8 years, and what we've seen at the start, then interpreters were on site with the traditional equipment, and we were trying to sell this more sustainable and more flexible way of using remote interpretation. And we got into some deals, but actually when the COVID or the pandemic hit, we saw suddenly the change of the whole industry, and the mindset changed. So now suddenly they say, okay, it is possible to do events as remote interpretation, and we trained 5,000 or more interpreters, and we also saw that this started then to generate the demand, because people met online. They saw we could deliver into any platform, into Zoom, into Teams, into On24 and Hopin and all of these, and suddenly you can have interpretation where you couldn't before, because on the one hand side interpreters were ready and trained, and on the other side the customer saw that this was possible. So there has been a big shift and growth, certainly for remote interpretation, and also interpretation overall has grown in the last few years in the number of hours used for interpretation. So it's technology has definitely helped to outgrow this demand and market. And now it's a new, people see that technology can help and actually expand the business for both interpreters and satisfy the customers.
So you would say that demand has actually increased because in the long term, because of the pandemic, demand has actually increased because more and more people realize that there was a cost-effective way to do remote interpretation services.
Yeah, and that you can, because there was a big limitation before with on-site where you only, let's say, had the handful, let's say, interpreters, let's say in Zurich where I am, that could work locally. And then when you need different languages, let's say Japanese into German, you would then have to maybe fly in some people, and that limits then the reach and also certainly the efficiency of interpretation. If you have to spend a lot of time traveling, you can spend less time on working. So I do think it's been increasing the efficiency also for the interpreters and hopefully also their well-being, and I believe so.
Which kind of takes us to our next point here is you make the point that there's not enough interpreters to meet the increased demand. And just to quote from your article in Multilingual, says the change in how events are being delivered has opened up previously unexplored opportunities to invite and connect with attendees. Many enjoy being able to connect from the other end of the world, but for those that prefer the buzz and excitement of being on the ground, hybrid events are becoming increasingly popular to cater to both sides. However, the globalization of events could soon lead to a shortfall of skilled interpreters catering to rising demand. The continued development of AI and machine translation tools is therefore critical, and there have been recent announcements from tech giants such as Meta and Google on their own translation software. So, a lot of moving parts here with the event space. I think hybrid events are definitely here to stay. I think remote events are here to stay. This podcast, this live stream, was born out of the pandemic. In an attempt to meet a need for community that was previously being served by in-person events. So, I mean, that's literally why I started doing this a couple years ago. So you make the point with this increased demand, there's going to be, or already is perhaps, a shortfall of skilled interpreters. Talk to me a little bit about that. Are you seeing this? Is this something that you're noticing in the industry? Is it hard to find skilled, qualified interpreters to service needs? Or is this kind of just a future prediction here?
It's almost a future prediction.
Okay.
And just for people to understand how this demand increases is through that these hybrid events where you get more and more remote audience, so connecting, then the companies see, okay, we can add on these and these users in different countries where they maybe before just did local events in their own language. So that increases the demand for interpretation. But we're also seeing there are not more interpreters graduating from universities than people are retiring. So there is not a big growth also there on the interpretation side on the number of interpreters. Of course, RSI can help on the efficiency. So this is a future prediction, and sometimes on the busy, let's say the busy months, there is also some difficult to get some languages, and so like in the October, November timeframe, where there is a higher demand for events and things happening. So we've seen that already. So.
And you're saying that, so the switch to RSI, remote simultaneous interpreting, the switch to that, what have you seen as far as was there resistance for the interpreters? Because I've spoken to some conference interpreters that really weren't too happy about moving to RSI. It was, bring back the booth, You know, it's we want the booth. How have those perceptions changed that you've seen? And I know you're not a working interpreter yourself, but how have you seen those perceptions shifting amongst the interpreter community, specifically the conference interpreter community?
As I said before, like 4 or 5 years ago, or even when we started, there was a big reluctance. We were seen like almost like the devil in disguise
Right.
by some.
Right.
I've heard that quoted from interpreters themselves. And I was just fresh to the industry, and I thought, okay, this is going to be a challenge. And then the pandemic, and of course, not all interpreters, even in those days, they saw or a lot of them saw the possibilities and embraced it. So there was like two camps. But now I think they know that RSI benefit is there to stay, and it benefits them, and they can also work more and have a better life balance. I've spoken with some interpreters, and I still remember some years ago I spoke to one, and he said he used to travel around all the time, and what he really appreciated was that he could go and have a beer with his mates in the evening.
Yeah.
And not having to schedule that 2 months ahead.
Right. So, I mean, they're benefiting from working from home just like the rest of us.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of this was driven by the increase in remote simultaneous interpreting and video remote interpreting, VRI, RSI, whatever acronym, pick your acronym out there. And so that's a technology that's definitely been influencing the space a lot in the work that you do at Interprify. But you also, in your article, is mostly about machine translation, automatic speech recognition, and auto-generated captions for interpreting. And so for those of the folks listening out there, what is captioning as a service to promote accessibility to events? So what is multilingual captioning, and how does technology play a role in it?
Yeah, so let's start with the caption, and that's also where we started in the AI space about 2 years ago by using the technologies out there. And you mentioned ASR, the speech recognition, which is basically capturing the speech and conveying it, transcribing it into the captions, which was early demand was for accessibility. So what we've seen is that, and as you mentioned also, there's been a change that actually captions is used by a lot of people, either for understanding or for helping taking notes. So it's not just accessibility, it's something that's being generally used by everyone. But so that's just captioning what's said on the floor or in the room, like here. And translated captions is taking what's being said, translating it into a different language in real time or close to real time, and then producing captions in a different language, like German, for example, for this. So we're using machine translation for that.
Is this a service, the translated captions, is this a service that has been made possible by technology, i.e. machine translation? Or, I mean, forgive me, this isn't my space, the captioning space, right? So on this question, is this a service that's been around for a long time? Did humans actually used to do this, translate captions in real time? I know we've had automated captioning for a long time, but as far from a multilingual standpoint, has that been around for a while, or is it new?
This is quite new. I mean, there have been prototypes around for a long time, but it's new that the quality is at the level it is today and the accuracy. So I would say it's new also that it can be provided in mass for a lot of languages. So this is something quite recent in.
And traditionally, are you seeing multilingual captioning? Are you seeing this as an alternative to conference interpreting or simultaneous interpreting, or is this something that is typically added on as an extra in addition to simultaneous interpreting for events?
We've seen, or in the last years or two, we've seen that this is added on as addition for depending on. So we have the events. Maybe a small example like Switzerland, where we have 3 main languages, and French and German are the predominant ones. So you have interpretation for that, but none for Italian because there are few participants and it's more expensive. So then you can add on Italian with captions. Where we've seen that it's, I wouldn't say replace the interpreter, because these are customers that come to us wanting multilingual services, but they don't have the budget for interpretation. They've never used interpretation, but they feel, okay, this can bring them something. So in those cases, we provide captioned or translated captions only, because then they don't have the budget for the interpreter.
Right.
So it's sort of both.
Well, and this takes us back to our conversation about demand increasing, right? And I define, I'm not sure how the economists define it, but I define demand as, not just people wanting a service, but people wanting a service and being able to purchase that service and to pay for that service. And a lot of people previously wanted interpreting for their events, but the flying interpreters out, setting up a booth, renting the equipment, all of that stuff, paying half-day minimums, paying for 2 interpreters so that they can trade off as best practice. This was largely cost prohibitive for people, so the demand wasn't there just because people couldn't afford it. And with the rise with technology, there is increased demand because the costs are going down, or these minimal viable products are coming onto the market that allow people to actually dip their toe into it. Because I know there's a lot of people, a lot of event organizers out there that would love to make their event more accessible. They just don't have the budget for it. So this is where the technology has been really coming into play.
Definitely, and that was also our main motivation for starting with technology. About 3-4 years ago, we had prototypes, because we saw most of the, let's say, deals, we call them, that we lost were not to competition or something else. It was to budget. They just didn't have the budget for it, although they wanted it. And you, so to quote Henry Ford, if you ask people what they want, they would say cheaper interpreters. But there is a level there on, because as you say, you need 2 interpreters, and they are also highly professional. So that the technology can help to supply that big demand that's out there for these more affordable services. So
that takes us to, I think we've already gone over this, but I just wanted to bring up some of the quote I had on screen earlier for those that are listening as a podcast and can't read it. I'll read this just to define the terms. We've been talking about machine translation and automatic speech recognition, which are the 2 technologies that are at play here when we're talking about live captioning. The difference, quoting from the article, the difference between ASR and MT captions is that with ASR, the AI-powered technology automatically recognizes the speech and transcribes it into text in real time. With machine translation, AI-powered technology will automatically translate the speech from one language into another and display it as text in real time. Moving on, I'm talking about, can we automate this live translation, which is what we've been talking about. The quote continues, together, automated speech recognition, or ASR, and machine translation, or MT, technology is able to transcribe and translate live speech. Attendees are provided with real-time closed captions, which they can turn on and off depending upon on their preferred language. The difference between ASR and MT captions is that with ASR, the AI-powered technology automatically recognizes the speech and transcribes it into text in real time. With machine translation, AI-powered technology will automatically translate the speech from one language into another and display it as text in real time. So that's kind of what we've been talking about for those listening when it comes to ASR and MT. And you need both in order to make this work, right? I know I've talked to some folks about, so we're talking about speech to text and then machine translation. So another word for ASR would be speech to text, STT, as some people call it. And I've had some conversations with folks around speech to speech engines. Do you have any comments on speech to speech, which would be just skipping the step of transcribing it and machine translating it for those listening?
Certainly. So, I mean, we provide speech-to-speech service today. We just launched it 2 weeks or a bit more than a couple of weeks ago at Eventec Live, where you then, instead of reading the caption, you can listen to the machine reading them for you. What you're mentioning, the speech-to-speech models, that's quite far. It's still a cascading approach.
Okay.
Transcribing, translating, and then the text-to-speech.
Right.
The speech-to-speech, we need more data, and that's more on the university
on the academic
level
side
and research level at the moment. But
let the nerds worry about it.
In reality, the speech-to-speech service that we provide is, you could say, is a speech-to-speech, although it's a cascaded approach.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the same service. It's just what's happening on the back end, or going through different hoops. Yeah, I was just curious about that, because the conversations I've had with people about speech to speech, I've kind of thought the same thing, which is like, why? Like it requires so much data to train the engines, and we're not talking about text-based files or databases. We're talking about audio that needs to be used to train it. So it's such a heavy training process. Like, why do that when we can have this cascading approach, as you put it? So I was just curious about that.
But it'd be interesting. Maybe in the future there will be.
Well, like you said, I'm sure there's universities are working on it right now, because it's a fascinating thing in concept. But not every fascinating thing has a practical business use case for it, especially not in the development stage. You were mentioning earlier that there were many reasons why people use captions. And for me, like growing up, captions were the thing that you accidentally turned on your TV and couldn't figure out how to get rid of, and they were super annoying, right? That was like the only time I would ever see captions. As an American, I wasn't exposed to a lot of foreign films with subtitles to translate for me. So I'd see captions on like the nightly news, for example. And back then, 20 years ago, I don't think it's controversial to say that captions were for the deaf and hard of hearing. It was an accessibility service that was being provided so that the deaf and hard of hearing could understand what was going on the TV. Today, I would say that's still a very important function of providing live captioning services from an accessibility standpoint, but also the way people use captions has shifted, and I'd say they've become much more mainstream. And you touch on that in your article. And for those of you watching, I've got some bullet points up here, which I'll read later. Talk to us a little bit about this.
Yes. So, well, where I'm from in Norway, like even 40 years ago, we had captions, subtitled, because everything was in English. So
right. Yeah.
It's different from where you're from.
That's why I caveated as an American.
Yeah.
Right. It's an important distinction.
And it is So captions certainly for accessibility. What maybe an example that this was maybe at the early days of our captions, we were trialing it with a big institution in Geneva, and then we switched it on for accessibility reasons because someone needed it for this event, and then we had it for a few, and then it was switched off. And then a lot of people said, please switch it on again, because they started to use it to follow, because you can scroll back and see, okay, what did this delegate say? And when I'm sort of preparing my questions, and then, so that's a very useful case for it, also having the transcripts afterwards of everything that's being said, when you can, and then having it also in different languages is even more useful if someone is proficient in English, but they have to write the report to the German colleagues in German, then they would take the German transcripts from the captions to help them in the report. And we're seeing a lot of these tools today that we're using. So that's...
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I was going to say, and we're seeing a lot of these tools from the big guys, as you mentioned, Facebook, Google, right? We're on the back end, for those of you watching who want to know how the sausage is made, on the back end of this live stream right now, we're just sitting in a Google Meet meeting. And Google even has a live caption service where you can turn on the automatic captions, and it has a live captioning translation service. So I could turn that on and be getting a transcript in real time of what we are talking about. What is the conversation? Where is it going in Spanish, French, German, whatever language I wanted that's supported? How do you see that affecting the way, the fact, and by that I mean the fact that the big guys, the mainstream, the platform providers themselves are incorporating language accessibility components into their product? How do you see that affecting the industry? Because I think a lot of companies have built a lot of business around integrating with the platforms. And if the platforms are starting to generate their own solutions, is that going to have a negative effect on the industry, or is it going to help the industry because it's actually raising awareness and creating that demand that we were talking about?
I think the latter, that it will help the industry. Of course, we as an industry also need to find then where we have our niche and where we can add. But on the low end, having everyone being used to using translated captions and captions in, let's say, normal meetings, normal even private conversations sometimes. So that gives, when they then have it, let's say, an important meeting, launching a new product, or the CEO doing an all hands, where they want someone to take the responsibility for it. I think we've seen similar development in the translation industry, but when Google Translate came out, I think now 16 years ago, you probably had the same, I wasn't in the language industry then, but probably the same discussions where what will happen now? Will they all use just Google Translate? But we've seen that's created much more business for the professional language service providers, because now the demand grows, because everyone see, okay, we can have it translated. Now we want it professionally done. So
yeah, it seems like every 5 years in this industry, we go through oh crap, we're all going to lose our jobs to fill in the blank moment. And yeah, it was machine translation. Nowadays, it's all about artificial intelligence, large language models, ChatGPT, all that kind of stuff, which people are talking about, which I'm going to resist the urge to steer the conversation into that direction, because I think there's been plenty of conversations happening in that space around how ChatGPT and AI type services are changing our industry. But going back, before we get to the role of the human here, I just wanted to, for the benefit of those listening as a podcast, which we will upload later, why use captions? And Oddmund makes some points in his article. Number one, the deaf and hard of hearing, of course, who can follow the dialogue in written form with the aid of captioning. Number two, people who wish to follow the discussion but are in a location where another dialogue is taking place. I think of like when you go to the gym and they have TVs on the wall. They usually have the captions turned on so that you can actually follow what's going along. Individuals in a noisy environment, like the gym, in a cafe who wish to follow the event even when listening conditions are poor. Those who wish to have a readable feed to back up their understanding of what is being said. For instance, in a chemical conference, when complex formulas are being voiced, it is sometimes useful to have a readable text feed alongside the spoken words. And I love that example that you give, because this is an example where I definitely want a human in the loop. I wouldn't, if we're talking about complex formulas, I'm not sure I would trust a language engine to be able, or a speech to text engine to be able to capture everything perfectly. And those, number, whatever point we're on, those attending but not contributing in areas of poor network connection where audio feeds may or may not be unreliable. And I wanted to go to this where I've, just from a personal standpoint, like these days, I watch captions with everything. And I think, I'm not sure if it's because, but it happened around the same time that I started watching things with captions when I had kids. Because kids are noisy. And if you want to understand what's going on and you've got 3 kids running around having pillow fights, then it helps to have the captions on, because then you can actually, you can listen, but you can also make sure that you're understanding by watching the captions. And another thing that I've noticed is my kids are excellent readers and writers. I mean, my kids are 4, 5, and 7. They're young still. But they've been reading and writing from an early age, and especially reading. And I attribute that, this is complete speculation on my part, but I attribute that to the fact that they grew up with captions on. It goes to the point where people that want to reinforce, I forget which point it is on screen here, but they want to reinforce what they're hearing. And I think that, especially even from a young age, kids are able to use that as well to be able to reinforce what they're learning. Right. And we have, some of us are visual learners, some of us are auditory learners. And I think it just, whether or not you're deaf or hard of hearing, I think captions have an important role to play.
Definitely in understanding and such.
Right.
And that for most people, I think nowadays use it. So.
Well, and if I'm going to watch a program in Spanish or German, and I mean, I claim to speak those languages, right? But I can, if I'm listening only, I can get a little bit. But if I turn those captions on, like the comprehension just skyrockets. And I'm not talking about captions in English. I'm talking about captions in that actual language. Well, this takes us to the human element, which I think is always so important when talking about interpretation or translation, for that matter, but particularly interpretation, because that's what we do as an industry, is connect humans. And I love how you put this, you phrase this in the article, which is taking the robot out of the human. And I'll just read some quotes here that I cherry picked. It's important to remember that while the technology is perfectly capable of working on its own, there will always be times when interpreters are needed. I'll repeat that. There will always be times when interpreters are needed. Just as computer-aided translation systems led to more work for translators, demand for interpreters will only grow as automation advances. Later, the article goes on to say, which is why, despite the rapid and significant improvements we've seen in machine translations, there continues to be a place for human beings at the table. What machine translations do is help take out the robotic, repetitive elements for interpreters, and for good reason. And there's a lot more context available in the article for those of you that can have access to Multilingual Magazine. But Oddmund, talk to us a little bit about this. You make this claim that there will always be a role for the human interpreters. What does that look like? Like, what message do you have for the interpreter out there who may be considering leaving the industry because they feel that they're going to be replaced?
No, I think I mentioned the parallels to the translation industry, and we are seeing now to provide a good service, if we call it Interprify AVIA, which is our overall AI caption and translated caption service. For it to really work well, we work with linguists because it's for specialized events, you need a glossary. You need to get things right. Company names,
Right.
Name of speakers, also maybe some special acronyms, and you need to know them in different languages if it's, because often it's the main language spoken is not English, could be Arabic and such. So there is we're using, let's say, linguists there that often are interpreters. And so that's where we're seeing, and then often the transcripts that are created, the customer said, okay, we want that a subtitle and produce a video afterwards because we want to distribute it and use it in e-learning or send. And then these are then not perfect, so they need to then be post-processed by a linguist in various languages, similar to what in the translation industry. So that's where I see the linguist, and where the machine does the job is just this repetitive job, sitting there 8 hours and just speaking. So my dream is that one linguist can run 10 events in parallel. Because sometimes
that's fair.
Or one interpreter, yeah.
Yeah.
But you have to use the machines and sort of train them and sort of make them ready. A bit like interpreters today, they prepare for an event, they read the documents, they create their own glossary.
Yeah.
For the machines, we need to do similar jobs to make it close to perfect. So.
Well, it just accelerates. And I do see the questions for those of you that are listening. I'm going to get to those. It accelerates things. I've been using ChatGPT. Someone asked a question about ChatGPT, so we have to talk about it a little bit. Like I use ChatGPT to write the introduction I gave to this podcast today. Hey, welcome, Oddmund Braaten. He is the blah, 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 blah. I fed it with a bunch of information from your press releases and said, give me a short intro for a podcast. And I don't think it got too many things wrong. You tell me if the intro was horrible. But what it did, and I heavily post-edited that. I'm never using raw output from the machines. I'm post-editing it. So it's helping in a lot of different use cases. But the question that we have, and sorry guys, there's technical difficulties. I haven't been able to, that's why we started a few minutes late today. LinkedIn was not playing nice with our streaming software. But so I can't bring the questions up on screen, but Atefa, Saditi, thank you so much for your comment. Randa, Al Ansari, let's get to your question. How can we learn and teach from, so what do we have to learn from, and you touched on this, what do we have to learn from machine translation post-editing is the first part of the question. And the second part of the question is, and what about ChatGPT? And if I were to interpret this question, it's not entirely clear, sorry, Rhonda, but if I were to interpret this, I would say, what can we learn from the translation industry, who I think the translation is probably 5 to 10 years ahead of the interpretation industry as far as implementing technology, not because interpretation is incompetent, just because it's so much more complex when you're dealing with live and spoken and all of those components as well. But machine translation post-editing for the translation industry is a way where translators are able to leverage machine translation to increase their efficiency. And how does that translate into computer-assisted interpretation systems, CAI systems, as opposed to CAT, computer-assisted translation systems.
Well, in the end, these are almost the same system. So
Right.
a real-time transcript is then created, and like a machine would create or translate a text for a translator, and then you post-edit it using similar tools, basically, or the same tools often, to post-edit transcription that's made in real time. So I don't think there's a big difference, and we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We're using what's being developed for the translation industry. So.
Nice. And ChatGPT, large language models, any comment on how these are affecting our space at this point?
In the, let's say, the real-time space that we are in, it's not affecting it. We are...
Well, frankly, it's not quick enough for real-time space.
Yeah,
like,
so
humans are literally quicker than the best AIs out there, in my opinion.
Like, I could see it, some interesting use cases that we think about for the future is, as you say, ChatGPT on OpenAI are good at sort of recreating the content for you, and because just to explain also what a machine is, what we have, the machine interpretation is not interpretation, it's just conveying what's being said. An interpreter sort of paraphrases, maybe shortened, and get more to the point, which means that when we do an event captions in English, translated into German, and is a fast speaker, there is quite a big overload because German is 30% larger, so we need to speed it up. So there I could see these models being able to do what the interpreter is doing, actually sort of summarizing and actually taking the essence out of what's being said, and even providing the content. Let's say it's a medical conference, there are nurses there are doctors there, even maybe some patients or laymen, and then we would provide a content in a different format for these three different categories from one speaker, which I think that's something where I can see also the models can help us. So
there's a prediction for the future, and as much as I'd love to keep talking about ChatGPT, because I'm definitely not sick of talking about ChatGPT, we are running out of time today. So, Oddmund, any closing thoughts? Anything I forgot to ask you during our talk today?
No, I mean, you mentioned one thing that I remember, that you said you wouldn't trust a machine for a chemical formula. Actually, that's...
Am I wrong?
Counterintuitive. The machines are actually, the more complicated it gets, the machines are doing often a better job. The less complicated, or the more ambiguous it is, like humor and sort of getting to the point, the human is better. So just on that side. So there is, I think, the room for both.
This is true. Thank you for correcting me on that. To provide some context on what I meant by that, I would trust the machine translation half of the process. Where I would not trust it is the speech to text, the automatic speech recognition. And that might just be specific to me, once again, as an American, because, as you know, we Americans talk like we have a wad of chewing tobacco in our mouth at all times. And sometimes machines struggle to understand me. So that's where I wouldn't trust it, to be able to understand me. But yeah, thank you for correcting me on that.
But no, I think there is a room for both the machines and the human, and sort of interpreters will not be replaced by technology. They will be replaced by interpreters utilizing technology. I think that's a famous quote within the industry. So.
Yep. Yes, it is. Well, Oddmund, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, everybody that's joined us in chat. You can please join me in thanking Oddmund as we close out today. I'm going to bring it home here. If you've enjoyed this Nimdzi Live experience, then you can join us next time on tomorrow. And if, like I said at the beginning, we have a lovely calendar of events here in the language industry, but tomorrow I'm going to be talking live with Kirti Vashi. We're going to be talking about the limits of AI and language. So basically continuing this conversation that we started right here today. If you're not already signed up for that, go ahead to our LinkedIn page and sign up for that. You can also follow Nimdzi Insights to make sure that you're subscribed and get notified when we publish the latest research. I appreciate our guest today, Oddmund Braaten. I appreciate my colleagues here at Nimdzi Insights doing all of the hard work so I can have these fun conversations. I appreciate everybody in our industry who fills out surveys and schedules briefings with us so that we can include you in our published industry research. And lastly, I, of course, appreciate you, the audience, who are joining us live today. All of the dialogue and chat, the comments, questions, and especially criticisms. And I will look forward to next time. Cheers.